Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I want to take a look at the federal announcement or update that just happened the other day with none other than Mark Holland, Chrystia Freeland, Jenna Sudds, and Anita Anand, as one of the reporters posed a question to them about the Liberal government paying TikTok influencers or social media influencers money to push their message and their agenda out there.
This question is for the Deputy Prime Minister. I'd honestly take answers from any of you up there. But we've seen the Liberal government tapping influencers, and we're now seeing departments using marketing money to also tap influencers to deliver government messaging. I guess why pay influencers? Why do this?
I'm happy to offer a really general answer, which is it is really important for our government to be sure Canadians know what we are doing on their behalf. We work for you guys and we work for all Canadians, and the money that the Government of Canada invests is the money of Canadians. And so we are all really, really focused on talking to Canadians, on being out in person and talking to as many people as we can in person. As you guys know, I used to be a journalist. I still read 2 newspapers every day in print and take pictures of the articles that I share with people. And I am a huge believer in the value of the work that all of you guys do, the work of professional salaried journalists. We also recognize that a lot of Canadians get their information from other sources, and it's our responsibility to be sure that we are meeting Canadians where they are. I don't know if anyone else wants to venture an answer.
Leave it up to Chrystia Freeland to tell us once again that she used to be a journalist. But the audacity of this woman to say the Canadian people need to know what's going on because they work for us, when they have been one of the least transparent governments that we have ever had, even though that's their claim to fame. But I find this question very interesting because just a few months back, if you don't remember, they actually had an article on this about the Liberal government turning to influencers to get its message across to younger Canadians. Now, their whole thing is fairness for all, but especially the targeting the younger generation. And normally during these announcements, especially with the budget, they'll invite higher up people. It says it's an invitation typically reserved for experts, stakeholders, and mainstream media, but the Liberals, the federal Liberals, are embracing influencers as they seek to win back disillusioned millennials, Gen Z voters, and others who consume information through social media. Now they go on to list some of these influencers, and one of them says, they realize that a lot of young people do not watch the news anymore. They don't consume traditional media, which is very true. I'm not going to take that away from them. But what's interesting here is they said, neither the office of the finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, nor the prime minister's office were willing to answer questions about such strategy. But they did say that influencers are not paid when invited to government events, which include housing announcements in Toronto in the weeks before the budget. Yet, as this question was just posed by that individual, they are paying, apparently now, these influencers when they just finished stating a few months ago that that's not the case. And this got me to remember about 2 years ago in the US, they started doing this with Biden in his campaign, where they tried to push out Democratic propaganda, essentially, and then found out that these guys were also getting paid for doing the exact same thing that our government is doing now.
What the Republican Party doesn't understand about Gen Z is we don't like you. You claim you want to appeal to Gen Z, but you call us stupid, you say we're dumb, you say we're indoctrinated. I promise it's a losing strategy. And Gen Z is watching the Republican Party extremely closely as they destroy our environment, take rights away from women, do nothing about kids being shot in schools, and if they think they can give the middle finger to our generation and get away with it, they're sorely mistaken. So President Biden just finished his State of the Union speech, and I'm still at the White House here watching
watching it with everyone, and it was a terrific speech. I mean, he laid out a bunch of different policy proposals. He talked about the amazing achievements he's had in 2 years of his presidency and what he wants to accomplish in the next 2 years. And there were many times when Republicans tried to heckle them, but he gave it right back to them and put them right in their place. So yeah, just an amazing speech from President Biden, and I'm really excited for the next 2 years.
So President Biden has announced that he is running for re-election, and it's likely going to be him versus Donald Trump in 2024. And if you're not supporting President Biden, you're not supporting America. He's been one of the most productive presidents in American history. I mean, he passed the infrastructure bill, the American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act. I mean, I could go on for forever. But what do the Republicans have to show the American people? An indicted former president taking rights away from women and insurrection? The choice is clear. We will not be supporting the radical Republican Party in 2024. Instead, we'll be supporting President Biden and the Democrats and their amazing policies.
We all know this kid, right? And how about this one? Well, as many of us have suspected for a long time, looks like those two are partisan hacks bought and paid for by the DNC to the tune of around $210,000. If you check their bios, both of them are managed by a company called Palette Media. And you might think, well, why is that important? Because Palette Media received direct payments by the DNC totaling $210,000. Apparently, the DNC didn't want to make direct payments. By the way, all of this is publicly available on the FEC website, so they don't want to make direct payments exposing Harry and his goons. So instead, they get a little creative with their accounting. First, they send the money to Palette, which then manages their talents like Harry. Now, none of this should surprise anyone because it's public knowledge that Biden started an army of social media influencers. But I guess they didn't want you to know who.
Very interesting that now our liberal government is doing what the Democratic government is doing. Especially since, if you don't remember, back in January when Tucker Carlson came to Alberta to talk with Danielle Smith, the liberals lost their mind and were going on about how right-wing, far right-wing Republican talking points are coming over to Canada now, and our conservatives are MAGA conservatives now.
Trying to bring the kind of division that they have in the United States north of the border. MAGA-style conservatism has no place in Canada, and it's trying to reach through our borders. And as Minister Rodriguez has said, conservative premiers, instead of doing their jobs, are trying to invite this wave of populism. And I can tell you, it's making newcomers nervous and fearful. People in the LGBTQ community do not feel safe. We have people who want to run for office that take a look at what happened last night in Edmonton and say, why bother? And that is not good for the political commons. It's not good for Canadian democracy.
Mr. Rodriguez, you brought up Pierre Poilievre's name in your comments. I mean, is this going to be your strategy effectively going forward? Is tying Pierre Poilievre to Trump?
He wants to be prime minister of this country. What happened last night is not acceptable. Is he going to condemn that? If he wants to run for prime minister, he should have the courage to condemn those. It's not acceptable in our country.
So is that going to be your strategy?
People attended, sir. I mean, what do you make of the fact that there is an audience for it and for their perspective?
Well, as I said in French, the extreme right politics, don't ask the question if it's coming to Canada. It's already here.
And here we have some prime examples of the fear-mongering and hypocrisy that the liberal government love to push. Because if the libs copy anything that the Democrats do, that's all fair game. But if the conservatives have any sort of inkling like the Republicans do, then now all of a sudden there are far-right and MAGA conservatives. Our democracy is at risk, and everything that they're saying is misinformation and disinformation, but the liberals and their propaganda and their information, that's all fair and true. And I feel like this is kind of what Mark Holland's trying to point at when he gives his answer.
When at the advent of television, radio, and print, it took us a long time to understand how to be able to see what was true and how to disseminate information. And there was a great battle at that moment in time to define what was true. And there are forces in this world, and you can look at Putin as a prime example, who are using modern technologies with bots and other ways to disseminate false information, to destabilize democracies by not allowing democratic countries to know what is and what isn't true. And so that is I think, an existential threat to democracy. And I think that when we're having conversations about what is true, it's important that we find new ways to communicate to Canadians where they are so that we can be able to share what the government is trying to accomplish and why it's doing what it's doing. Because a lie spreads very, very quickly. The good news about a lie, when it spreads quickly, is that once disproven, that people start to get more suspicious generally of the information they consume. That's what happened with print, that's what happened with radio, and that's what happened with television. And I think in the social media age, we haven't yet to get to that equilibrium point.
Now, surprisingly, I do agree with Mark Holland on one thing he said there, that when people start to sniff out the lies, they stop listening to where that source of information is coming from. And I'm pretty sure that's what the Liberal government is dealing with right now, because the amount of scandals that have been uncovered, the mismanagement of money, programs, the corruption, now the foreign interference, you name it, these guys are on the hook for almost everything. And people are just fed up with them, and you can see that with the poll numbers. But as we get into now Anita Anand's answer, there is a point that they make where they say the younger generation don't consume traditional media, which I totally agree with. Yes, they don't read papers. They're probably not watching cable TV or TV in general. A lot of it is online. But then she starts talking about the safety and security of the apps and the information. And this is what she says.
I guess I'll just add, I have 4 kids. All of us up here have kids, and we see that our newspapers on our kitchen counters are not getting read by our children. At least I do. And I'll just say that this is a time where the way in which media is consumed is evolving, and we need to evolve with the times. And certainly when I was Minister of National Defense, we saw in numerous instances that misinformation and disinformation were creeping into our media, our systems across the country, and in the private and public sector were being hacked by cyber criminals. And so essentially, I don't think we should look at the use of influencers in a silo. We should actually think about how, as a government, we are responding to the use of misinformation and disinformation to change the way in which people think. And in yesteryear, what was understood to be the truth was more objective. We are now in an era where people debate what is true. And in order to be in the realm of discussing the truth, we need to ensure that the work that we are doing in whatever portfolio is actually disseminated in an honest and clear way so that Canadians can understand what their taxpayer dollars are paying for.
Well, we did just learn that more than $8 billion of taxpayer money has been sent to the Ukraine, so I guess the Liberals have given us that bit of information. However, I believe they're misconstruing misinformation and disinformation for this new term that's been floating around called malinformation. And the Department of Homeland Security in the US says malinformation is factual information shared typically out of context with harmful intent. And the reason I say this is because on the Canadian government page, they say MDM, which is misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Malinformation refers to the information that stems from the truth, but is often exaggerated in a way that misleads and causes potential harm. And to me, a prime example would be them saying 8 out of 10 individuals get more money back for the carbon tax. Well, no, the truth is actually they don't, but you don't like that because it actually hurts your party and what you're trying to push. So you claim misinformation, disinformation, but we could go down a long laundry list of things that you probably would say is misinformation and disinformation, but it's actually true. So it'd be malinformation. It's true information, but you guys simply don't like it because it hurts your political points. But If we step back to what Anita was just mentioning about when she was on the Department of National Security, the reporter picks up on that and questions her on, well, if that's the case, why are you guys using TikTok? And this is a great question because in that earlier article where they were mentioning the influencers, it states TikTok, a popular video app that has been banned on the federal government's devices under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau over privacy and cybersecurity concerns. That's been already established, yet they are paying influencers to use these platforms. And this is what she had to say to that.
Thank you for all those answers. My follow-up is, if TikTok is potentially a national security risk, then why are you leaning on its influencers to deliver government messaging?
Sure. I mean, as you know, we do take the potential threat posed by TikTok very seriously, and our government has taken real, meaningful action there. That is the right thing to do, and that is certainly an issue which we are discussing with our allies. The broader question of foreign interference and how, as countries, we can protect our own democracy and the democracy of our partners.
And I'll just say that influencers, being influencers, are heard on other media platforms other than TikTok. And what we do, and certainly at Treasury Board, we are responsible for the Government of Canada's cybersecurity strategy. We evaluate each platform for the security risk it poses, together with the Communication Security Establishment. And so we know that influencers are able to reach different sectors of the Canadian population through different media platforms. That doesn't mean that the decision relating to TikTok is somehow wrong. It just means that we need to be using safe platforms in order to disseminate the information about our policy and reach those particular sectors of the population.
What is she even saying? If our own government has stated that TikTok has privacy and cybersecurity concerns, then it would be wrong to be using that platform to promote any sort of information, regardless if it's for the Canadian public or if you guys are funding it or whatnot. You guys have already deemed it not safe. So what is she talking about? Yes, I understand she's balling up other things like Twitter and YouTube and whatever, but the question is specifically about TikTok, and she's trying to skirt around this. But as always, that's just how I look at it. I'd love to hear from you guys, so please let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this whole situation. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.